Hello and welcome to Producers Roundtable. I'm Joe Johnson, studio manager here at ONTV, and we have a very special guest here with us today, Lynne Woodison. Lynne, thanks for joining us. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Now, a lot of you may recognize Lynne as being a longtime voice on Detroit area radio. Lynne also went through our video production classes here at ONTV, so she's an actual producer here at ONTV.
Nothing motivates you like not having a job.
There you go. So let's go back. Well, first of all, did you grow up in the Detroit area? What's your history? Where are you from?
I did. I am from Birmingham, born and raised. My family had a business in Detroit. My mom and dad were, my mom was from Rochester. My dad was from Detroit. So I've been here all my life except for a brief foray into the Los Angeles market.
Oh, okay. So you went out there for a little while.
Yep.
So upon graduating high school and stuff like that, when did radio call to you? When did you make that decision you wanted to get into broadcasting?
I think the motivation was really more about performance. Radio wasn't necessarily open to a lot of women at the time. Although, you know, the history was in the making, the Equal Rights Amendment, and all things were happening, and we were burning our bras, and we were like, make room for us. But I really wanted to perform, and after college, I moved out to Los Angeles to either be an actress or a performer of some type, and ended up applying for a job at the radio station, KMET.
Okay.
And I walked in the door, and this is the truth, and I spoke to the receptionist, and I said, I'd really like to be on the air. Do you have anything open? And I look back and think, what an idiot. And she said, well, I'll get the general manager, and I ended up with a job, temporary, in the collections department. For 6 weeks, I said, I'll take it. And that was the beginning of watching and learning. It was a pretty interesting time in radio, and it happened to be rock radio. And I met members of the Beatles there, Elton John. It was 1972.
Wow.
So I realized that this was something I wanted to be around. I would just had thought about joining the Groundlings, which was in San Francisco at the time.
An improv troupe.
Right, and so everything was happening. You know, if you watch any of the history of Second City and what have you, it was just starting to bubble up under the surface. My father had a heart attack. He was fine, but I moved home, never made it back out.
So what did you feel you gained from your time in LA? I would imagine the training with the Groundlings gave you kind
Well, I didn't end up doing it, but
didn't do it.
I was just aware of all this stuff that was starting to really happen in the, not the finer part of the arts, more the comedy and the rock and roll and the, you know, we were kids of the 60s. Mm-hmm. You know, I graduated in 1969. It was a wild time. Okay. So we were all excited for what was on the horizon.
So in LA, you met some big names, and that's when you decided you wanted to make a career of this. You come back to Detroit. What happened after you came back to
Well, I was back living at home and putting, you know, looking at ads in the newspaper, and, you know, the only thing that was open, because they didn't have interns even at the time, I became a secretary for WHFI. I don't know if you're...
I don't remember that one.
And then WDRQ.
DRQ, I remember.
Yes, and I worked my way up from the executive secretary to the music director. I guess I was part-time music director, part-time promotions director. You know, I was really someone who wanted to do all the work. Mm-hmm. You know?
When did you develop this voice? At what point were you getting compliments on your voice? When did that happen?
I was the kid in third grade that wanted to read out loud. I always had the ability to read in a mellifluous voice. I was aware of it. You know, I think really everybody could have a nice voice if they trained themselves to it. You know, you have to be aware of it, but I always wanted, that was what I wanted to do, something with my voice.
Okay. So do you remember transitioning to the microphone? When did you?
Yeah, at WDRQ, I said.
So DRQ, you made that transition.
The guys were like, you want to do the news? Because it was all guys. You know, there were no women on the air. And I said, yeah, I do. And they let me do the news for a while. Then as as your youth will have it, you move around to a lot of jobs. I went to, my first on-air job was at WIQB in Ann Arbor, while I was working at WDRQ. So I was working 7 days a week, 2 on the air. Then I went to a station called WM, what was it? It was Magic Radio, it was WMGC.
Okay.
Same company that I ended up working for forever, and afternoons. And then I got the call to go to W4 afternoons. And again, I was the first woman in afternoons in Detroit. And I believe I was the first woman on afternoons at W4, or in the rock genre.
Yeah.
And then that's where I ended up staying.
So W4.
That's WWWW.
Yeah.
It really helped if you could say W, because a lot of people don't.
Now that was country for a long time, but prior.
No,
to
this
being,
is way.
Yeah, this is before that.
This
right?
was Freeform rock radio, where you could go into the studio before your show, pick your albums, put them in a stack, take a grease pencil and mark off the song you were going to play off of this album. And everybody always wanted to play the same songs. So you probably heard Freebird 4 times in the day.
So you had a little bit more freedom to just kind of, you played what you liked? Was that the
Imagine
concept?
that.
That's
Yes.
unheard of today.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the good old days.
So what did you like? What did you like during those days?
I liked, boy, I had a very eclectic taste back then. So I loved Cream and I loved the Beatles. I loved, but I loved Pat Metheny. I loved jazz-oriented stuff. So I think I was more, I loved music, but I was more into the performance part than anything.
Yeah. You know, being a fan of the TV show WKRP, you know, you got these DJs, I remember, you know, putting their vinyl records on and getting them going. And
I think I worked with a few of them, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, so gosh, the technology's changed so much. Yep. And then over the course of your career, you were with several different stations. You were with Riff for a while? And
well,
CSX,
I ended up, I have to remember this myself. Yes, in between all of this craziness, yes, W4 went country. I worked with Howard Stern for a minute.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
He walked in the door and it was like, boy, here comes a sea change of radio. Even though Steve Dahl had been doing mornings, and I always feel he was one of the pioneers. He was, you know, the scouts take the arrows. So he was in Chicago by then. JJ and the Morning Crew moved over to Riff. W4 went country. There was an opening for a newscaster for JJ and the Morning Crew, and I got hired there.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, there's a period of time where a family member gave me a Sirius satellite radio as a Christmas present, and I liked it for a while, but you know what I missed? I missed the personalities. I missed the talk between songs. That might be hard to believe, but song after song after song gets kind of monotonous and boring. What do you feel you brought to the table as being a personality on the radio?
My sense of it was that I was a woman, and it was a male-driven business, and so I felt that I had some respect from the guys that I worked with, in the sense that I would just always say, what are you talking about? Like your wife would say to you, or your girlfriend, or your daughter. I'd be like, what?
You were the voice of reason.
Well, it didn't, I don't think it started off that way, but I really I enjoy working with men a lot. And I think men are hilarious and fun and silly, and it just sort of moved from there. And honest to God, I never wanted to be the star of the show. I was very happy being the responder or the kid in the back of the class, going, what are you talking about? And I watch TV right now and I look at some of this political stuff and I'm like, oh, I wish I were on the air.
Yeah. Did you get recognized when you were out in the public? Did people hear your voice and go, wait a second, I know you?
You know, the weirdest thing is, obviously, because it's radio, at first people don't know who you are, but to this day, I will, and I've been on the air for 8 years. I still see people go, their heads will turn and they'll stare at me and they'll go, are you Lynne Woodison? It's the funniest thing to me too.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest sensation, and I like it, but I'm always surprised.
You never transferred or made the transition to television?
I did a lot of on-camera stuff when I first started for commercial voiceovers, or I mean television commercials for car dealerships.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I never, you have to look good all the time. And sometimes that supersedes your performance as a voice actor. I just really preferred to be behind the scenes.
I know, you know, in the '80s with the MTV and all that stuff.
Well, I would have loved to do that, though.
Yeah, what if that opportunity?
It would have been wonderful, but it didn't happen for me. But I also didn't pursue it.
Yeah. Now I want to hear some of your stories. You know, you said you've met some of the Beatles and Elton John. I would imagine, you know, being a longtime voice here in the Detroit area, I'm sure Bob Seger had to have been a staple at area radio station. Share some stories of some celebrity encounters. Were you ever in awe of somebody that you might have been, you know, sharing a space with?
Well, yes and no, because the guys were usually the titular head of the show. And so oftentimes the seating was, they would be there and you're the guest and I'm the co-host. You, the rock star, is always looking that way. So I observed a lot more and kept the show rolling, maybe in terms of peaks and valleys. But I was never as much the center of the stage as the guys were. And that's just the way it worked out. But it enabled me to study them, watch them, see if they were nervous or where, because it's so interesting. Celebrities are the same way as regular people. There's performance anxiety. And they would be, you know, grasping for water because they were thirsty or nervous, or they were tanking, they weren't funny. We had comedians in once a week.
Oh, yeah.
And they need their space to get comfortable. So I always felt my job was to make them comfortable by being pleasant.
You know, I grew up watching TV and spending time in the movie theater, so I idolized a lot of people, and over the course of my career I've had the opportunity to interview John Travolta and people like that, and you have to be professional, but the inner fanboy was going crazy, like, oh my God, I'm in the room with Vinnie Barbarino, you know? Did you ever encounter anyone like that where, of course, you had to be professional on the radio, but is there anyone you were just starstruck with?
Well, certainly starstruck with everyone, but again, because I wasn't as much the focus of running the show, I had the ability to sit back a little bit, get my breath, think of a really great question when, you know, lose your breath, lose your turn in this business. So I'd wait for an opening and then jump with what I thought was a good question. Paul McCartney I interviewed alone in a room for 45 minutes. And I was tongue-tied. We ended up talking about, I think my kids were little at the time, and I said, do you go out? Do you socialize? Who babysits? And we got into this whole thing about who their babysitters were and who they could call and trust in their home. So yeah, I think I just was different. I was not intimidated in a way.
Yeah. How have you seen Detroit area radio change throughout your career? How have you seen it evolve?
Oh, well, it's a wacky little business, as you know. I saw it from a completely different perch, being one of the few women in radio, rock radio anyway. So it was always a struggle for those of us who were in it to get your name, to stay in morning radio, to get your name on the show. To me, that was the biggest accomplishment of my career. To actually, you know, and Lynne was huge.
Yeah.
I miss, as much as you miss, I miss the personalities. Just chatting, just talking, just being funny. I don't think that will ever be back. I guess it's part of the economy. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess things have really changed as far as revenue generation and all that stuff. But so you said you haven't done this in 8 years.
Right, correct.
Why? If you had an opportunity to get back, would you get back into it?
Well,
what do you miss?
I didn't really have an opportunity. Nobody came knocking on my door for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I mean, the women in the morning there, I think you can count on one finger,
Yeah.
2 fingers maybe.
Yeah.
I had my voiceovers, which I've done for 30 years, which I adore, which is the acting part of my career. And that, well, it was very slow in 2008. You know, the bottom fell out of the universe
The recession,
for many people.
Yeah. And ad revenues dried up, yeah.
Well, there were no voiceover dollars or marketing dollars. So that was difficult. But making it through that, I've continued to work steadily. And I wish I could work every day.
Mm-hmm.
But the radio thing, I don't know that I would do weekends, or, I mean, not that I wouldn't want to, but it just didn't present itself. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I felt that I had reached the pinnacle of my career, and everything else was downhill from there. I don't know.
So when Lynne Woodison is driving around in her car, what do you listen to? What do you like today? Do you listen to classic rock? It's so strange for me to refer to songs I grew up with as classic rock, but do you listen to classic rock, or are there new modern acts that you get into? That
I go wherever the voice is. I want to hear. I think it's a product of your age as well. The older you get, the more you seem to want more information, more intake. I look for shows where people are talking seriously, from NPR to Sirius to local radio. If somebody's talking about something interesting, that's where I am. The music I can do myself, and I got to tell you too, Joe. Every song that I hear is a memory to me about either, playing it, having it run out while you're in the restroom, the actual promotion of the album, sitting in the interview with the rock star. It's really hard to turn it off, really hard.
Yeah. I this past December, I went out, I think it was to Livonia, to see the new Star Wars movie. And sitting with a friend, and my friend is kind of turning around and looking toward the back of the theater, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, I think Bob Seger's here with us. And I'm like, get out of here. And I turned around and looked, and I saw the white beard and the white mop of hair, and I said, that is Bob Seger. And I was just in awe, and made sure that after the movie, shook hands with him and said hi. Are there local people like that
He's
make such a big difference?
Dear. He is such a nice, wonderful person who I think just wanted to do his rock and roll. I think Michigan is a great place to be. I think people leave you alone, and that's probably what they want, because that's just a passion. Your music is your passion. You don't do it for the glory. At least I don't think most people do. So, I mean, yeah, I still stay in touch with some people. I like to go even through when Gary Shandling died.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I have a picture of him and me. I can hear my mother saying, he and I are
Correcting.
him and me. And people like that, every time someone drops. Or I was just reading the story about Robert Plant and Jimmy Page being sued over stealing the riff from Randy, California, from Spirit for the beginning of Stairway to Heaven.
Oh, okay.
And Robert Plant, when he came to town with Cadillac, remember when they used him for the whole campaign?
Yeah.
We sat and talked with him for an hour, and I was like, I'm talking to Robert Plant.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments are many. In fact, when Prince died, I went immediately right back. My memories, we were so lucky to be at the 2004 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame dinner, and regular people are not allowed in.
Yeah.
And our promotions manager got us into that dinner, and we really didn't have a seat, but we sat with the Sopranos for a while, and then we sat with P. Diddy and Chris Rock and Keith Richards, and it was just like, okay. And Bruce Springsteen was there, and the Eagles were there, and Kid Rock was there, and it was heady. It was a heady experience, but you really have to keep your feet on the ground, because it better turn into a good story the next day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're entering a phase now where we're losing a lot of legends. I mean, we lost David Bowie, and Prince and so many icons that it seems like I seem to get that information on Facebook now. I log into my Facebook account and you'll see everyone's posts, and I'm like, no, not Prince.
That was the biggest shocker to me, and so young. And of course, we're not so young anymore. And so our peers, I don't know what's going on, frankly, but that music transcends anything. That's what I love about music, you know, and it's been said a gazillion times, but it transports you right to wherever you want to be or didn't want to be, or it's just a memory. It's a memory.
When Prince passed away, my comment on Facebook was he provided the soundtrack to my youth. He did, and a lot of those artists, you know, I graduated high school in '84, and so you can imagine the impact that Michael Jackson and Prince had on my teenage years.
Well, my son was born in '82, and he had colic, and my husband danced to that first album of Prince's, so there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
But every generation has their people that it just is a really special thing to go back in time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now we have a microphone that's floating around for our live studio audience. You've had a few minutes to maybe think of some questions for Lynne. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask Lynne? Sue?
Lynne, hi.
Hi.
I'm Sue. As a baby boomer and a woman myself, do you think ageism is rampant in this industry?
Well, sure I do. As a woman, it's equally difficult, Sue, to you know, work your way up, and you have to look for openings, and you have to be ready, and you have to be prepared, and you know the old I had to work twice as hard, and guys don't think that. I'm sure you guys are like, wah, wah. To me, yes, it was a reality, but it was the reality. It was like, okay, that's my life. I've chosen to go into a male-dominated business. What do you expect? That's the way it's going to be. So ageism is starting to get to me a little bit, but when you're from this area and you went to high school here, you can't hide your age because your friends will go, no, you're not. And they'll post your, you know, face or your yearbook picture on Facebook. So you can't lie about it. I guess I'd rather be my age and look okay than pretend to be 10 years younger and go, wow, she looks old.
Yeah. There's a thing in Hollywood right now where, you know, these major actresses, these big names are coming out and speaking out against salary inequity. And to me, it shocks me. And it's illogical that, you know, somebody like a Julia Roberts will be making a fraction of a George Clooney, and I can't wrap my brain around that. And I could imagine during the time period you were in radio, you had to have
dealt with it.
that.
I dealt with it every day, and I never stopped annoying them, asking for parity. I just did. But on the other hand, again, it's a reality, and you just keep pushing at it, and you know, it is what it is. But I did hear a really interesting response from Amy Pascal, who was the woman really high up at Sony, and they had that email expose and all the emails came out, and that was when we found out that the Jennifer Lawrence was being paid so much less than Bradley Cooper in the movie they were in, American Hustle.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, she said, if you don't ask for it, I'm not giving it to you. And this was a woman, and I thought, well, she's actually right. You just have to, we're learning now to ask for it.
Yeah, so in this period of your life, have you received any accolades? Have you received any of those awards for your life's work?
Well, back in the 90s, I was the American, I can't think of the title, but I was the Radio Personality of the Year, female personality, and that meant a whole lot to me because my peers were at dinner with me, and your peers voted, or I mean, at least this group of women actually. If it was the guys, I probably wouldn't have won, but it meant a lot to me because you know, you do like to be acknowledged for your work, but generally speaking, it's enough for me to just work. I really wish I could do voiceovers every single day.
Yeah.
I do. I can pick up a script that I've never seen before and read it cold. It's a silly talent, but it's mine.
It's not that easy to do, believe me.
No,
I
it's
know.
not.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a Detroit area rock and roll or radio hall of fame in this area, and you deserve entry in that. I feel.
I was really not one of the major players, but I appreciate you saying that. I always felt like I had an impact, and when I run into people like some of the audience members tonight, it just makes me feel so good, because when you're on the air, you think, I don't know who's listening. You're in this room, you're alone. You come in at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're both grumpy, and you're like, grr, and then you open the mic and you have to be funny, and you don't know who's out there. And to have people come up to me and say, God, I loved listening to you, really means the world.
That's great. Any other questions out there? We got another question in the back.
Hi, Lynn. I've been listening to you forever, and you say you weren't a major player, but yeah, you were, because you could hold your own to the guys anytime.
Sure tried that.
With all the people that you have run across or that you have sat back and observed, have you ever thought of writing down your stories, the people that you've met, what you've seen and heard, the concerts you've been to? Have you ever thought of writing a book?
Time for a memoir.
Well, you know, it's funny, because everyone thinks of that because our business enabled us to meet these people and try and carve out a moment that wasn't just public relations. And yeah, I always felt that I did off the air sometimes more than on, because oftentimes celebrities will look to you to just like, bail me out here, because I'm dying. And those were the moments that I treasure. I would love to do that.
You know, being for me in video production, we have a lot of young people come through here, interns, college students, high school students, and the one piece of advice.
Unbelievable facility.
Oh yeah, we're really proud of it. And the one thing I always try to pound into these kids that come through here is do what you love. Follow your passion. Don't give up on your dreams. Is that similar advice you would give to any young people you come across?
Well, again, radio is not what it used to be. It's not an open field where everyone can run and play. So I would be worried if I had kids that wanted to go into radio. However, I always used to say there are first cousins of what you love to do. Sometimes when you just get involved somehow, something reveals itself to you that you're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. That's sort of related to this, and then all of a sudden you're off to the races. You do have to make money.
Right.
You have to support yourself. You have to, you know, you have to put away money for later and have a pension and all that stuff. So you just have to work at it and make sure that you're really good at what you do.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We're
Thank
so
you for having
happy
me.
that you're able to be here today and talk about your career and give advice, and hopefully we'll see you around here at ONTV.
Oh, I'd love to be here. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for watching Producers Roundtable, and we'll see you again in the future with another guest. Until then, I'm Joe Johnson for ONTV. Good night.